test for volume. Good evening and welcome to this week's live stream. Thank you so much for joining. I am super excited to kick off a brand new series here on the YouTube channel. Also, hello if you're attending or watching on Facebook. We love to have you here, so thank you so much for joining. This is going to be an exciting new series. I know that we've talked a lot about different facets of real estate, how to prepare, what the process is like, buying and selling. We've talked about all of these different components of real estate, but we haven't talked about really the fabric of the community yet. What do these different neighborhoods look like? What is lifestyle like here? And, you know, after all, this is New Orleans Real Estate and Lifestyles YouTube channels. So it's probably about time that we start talking about the different neighborhoods that we have here in New Orleans. So I figured out that the best way to do it is probably by just going ahead and taking it one neighborhood at a time, giving each one their glory. We're going to talk about the history of each neighborhood, the real estate market. We're also going to talk about what there is to do. So bars, restaurants, landmarks, public parks, all that different stuff we're going to be talking about. You know, there's a lot of history that's out there in New Orleans, and I don't think many people are aware of it. So it's been really interesting to dive in here as part of the Neighborhood Deep Dive series, to dive in and learn more about our fascinating, weird, and wonderful neighborhoods of New Orleans. Of course, tonight we're kicking things off with Bayou St. John and Esplanade Ridge. As many of you know, that is where I live. So I figured that would be kind of the best way to kick things off, is to do so with a neighborhood that I know just about as good, if not better, than any others. So we're going to start off tonight with my love, Bayou St. John and Esplanade Ridge. A couple of things before we kick off. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the YouTube video. Giving this live stream a like really helps with the algorithm, however that works. It pushes it out to other people, so more people get to discover the content, learn about our beautiful city, and get to know it a little bit better. And don't forget to follow on social media, on Instagram at Richard.Hebert Realtor, and then on TikTok it is at Real Estate New Orleans. So go take a look over there, give us a follow. Speaking of social media, we have some really great local features coming out. If you pop over to Instagram, you'll see those already in the works. Some beautiful home tours. We just had one go sort of viral for me. We have over 100,000 views on Facebook and Instagram of a beautiful listing by Engel & Volkers New Orleans. Rusty Harris is the listing agent for it, but I was able to feature that property. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's located in the French Quarter, 926 St. Peter. So go take a look at that. Because the demand was so high and people loved it so much, I am currently editing a full walkthrough video of the home. So for those that are curious, you're going to be able to take a deeper look at that home and see it in all of its beauty and East Lake charm. Also, you can book your complimentary one-on-one. It's a real estate strategy session, general questions, whatever it is. You can book those complimentary one-on-ones anytime. You can do so on my website, Richard.Hebert.Realtor.com. So book those. We can talk about anything that you'd like. You can meet me in person at our beautiful Engel & Volkers New Orleans shop at 2844 Magazine Street, right there at Washington Avenue. We can also do it virtually by phone phone call or we can have a Google Meet. But I'd love to connect with you. Every resource I provide is always free. So that is complimentary now and forever. Please participate in the chat. This is a fun one. Tonight we start talking about the neighborhoods. This is something where your expertise is probably just as good as mine on these topics and many other topics. But really tonight, I want to hear from you. If you go out in this neighborhood, if you have questions about the neighborhood, if you have a funny story about it or a cool family history, I'd love to hear from you in the chat. That makes this 100 times more fun. Just say hello in the chat if you're watching tonight. And then if you're watching the replay later on, please join us in the comments. I do read them and I do respond to them. So go check it out and please participate in the chat. That makes it so much more fun when everybody's in here cutting up on a Thursday night. And then I also want to give a shout out and a thank you to my incredible licensed assistant, Liz Wallace. She's also an advisor at Anglin Volkers New Orleans. She's going to be in the chat. So if you see Liz, that's who she is. She's also an amazing real estate advisor in her own right. There's Liz. And hi, Dinah. I'm so excited to have you here. Dinah, I actually got to see Tuesday night. I gave a quick talk and Q&A at an investor meetup. So the Gulf South Pride Investor Network. Come check us out there. Really cool group of people, really laid back, great group of people. If you're investor curious or an active investor, what have you, come join us at GSPN. So without further ado, again, I'm going to ask you, give us a hello in the comments. I see a few more people joining in. So give us a hello in the comments. Let me know where you're watching from. I think we have a couple people who might be tuning in from the road today. So if you are, please keep your eyes on the road. To start things off, of course, we're going to go through a ton of different things today. I mean, really, we're covering a lot of bases. This is a new format, so we're going to try something a little bit different. We also have a brand new introduction video that's in the works. Hello, Becky in Tuscaloosa and Ryan, who is on the road on vacation. So drive safe, have a nice time. But yes, we're going to cover a lot of information. New stuff is coming tonight. We're going to cover a ton of history. I'm going to try to keep my eyes locked on you as much as possible, but I have pages and pages of notes and cool, fun history that I was able to pull. Also, a lot of these names and things that we're going to talk about tonight, please don't judge the pronunciation. Look, my last name's Hébert. I'm going to give it my best, but some of them, who knows? So now to the star of the show. Bayou St. John and Esplanade Ridge. If you're not familiar, let's go ahead and take a look at where it is in relation to the rest of New Orleans. So the actual bayou itself is one thing, and then the neighborhood is another thing. They are connected, but when you hear people talk about the neighborhood, Bayou St. John and Esplanade Ridge, it's not the full run of the bayou. So I've got Google up here. Let's take a look at it. Hey, Scott, thanks for joining in. Scott's had to listen to me yammer on twice this week at different things. So thank you for coming back. So as you can see here, it is located, very close to City Park. It really touches City Park. Here we've got the French Quarter down here at the bend of the river. So something that's really interesting that we're going to talk about later is the history of the actual, hi, Jacqueline. So we're going to talk about the history of the bayou itself. This is super fascinating to me. This bayou actually originally connected all the way from up here, this big body of water, which is Lake Pontchartrain. It formerly connected to all the way through to the Mississippi River. We'll get a little more information on that in just a minute. But it's really interesting that the way that different bodies of water and the topography of our city have changed over time, have altered the way that the city is laid out, the way that homeowners and city dwellers interact with the actual landscape around us. So this is Bayou St. John. Of course, it runs all the way to the lake and it terminates right over here. So everything that you see in this red box, let me make sure I've got it centered for you. Everything in this red box is what we're going to be talking about tonight with Bayou St. John. You're also going to hear me talk about Esplanade Ridge. Esplanade Ridge, which as I zoom in, you'll see is this kind of, beautifully tree-lined area right here. That goes all the way down. So we do pair them together frequently. We're gonna take a look at both of them. So I just wanted to give you a geographical orientation of where we are within the city of New Orleans. What are the bounds of what we're going to be discussing tonight? And now we're going to talk about how we got here. So let's talk about the neighborhood history. Bayou St. John was originally a Native American trade route and portage well before Europeans came to the area and settled. Like I mentioned, it originally spanned all the way from Lake Pontchartrain down and connected with the Mississippi River. So you can imagine how that made for an incredible trade route, moving, furs and goods across this area. That is the fastest way to do so. So it originally started as an incredibly integral commerce link between the lake and the river. In 1708, a decade before New Orleans was even founded, the city has been thriving, or this neighborhood has been thriving since well before New Orleans became a thing. But in 1708, the port of Bayou St. John was established. Jean-Baptiste Lemoyne de Bienville, how's that? Was guided to this area by native tribes in 1708 while scouting the site for the future city. Several buildings in the neighborhood do date back to the late 1700s. It's kind of cool to see that because in the French Quarter, a number of the original buildings, the French buildings, burned down during a catastrophic fire. So you lost a big section of that history in the French Quarter, but that fire did not make its way all the way to Bayou St. John. So we do still have homes and buildings here that date back to the late 1700s, early 1800s, and they are among the oldest still standing structures in the entire city of New Orleans. And then the Louisiana Purchase came along, and after that, affluent Creole families began to come to the area. They built really grand homes along Esplanade Avenue. Many of them you see. I feel like New Orleans tourism uses a great deal of Esplanade photography, but these Creole families came to town and they built along Esplanade Avenue, and this was actually somewhat in a competitive manner with other Americans building along St. Charles, right? So there was this element of a racial divide between the two areas, and these wealthy Creole families built along Esplanade to kind of counter the primarily white development that was happening on St. Charles. They're both equally beautiful areas, but Esplanade Avenue became the premier address for upper-class Creoles and free people of color in the 19th century. Sometimes you may hear it even referred to as the Creole Millionaires Row. So this was a very affluent, culturally rich, and culturally diverse area. And then following the Civil War, the area attracted a broader mix of residents. More families of modest means, of working class families, they started moving into this area. Land began being subdivided so that you were able to afford a smaller plot of land and build something more modest on that plat of land. And that's when it really started to become and started to look like what it is today. And that's going to be in that Reconstruction era post-Civil War. Now, the bayou itself, I know we're going kind of quick. There's a lot to cover with the history. I have really been doing a lot of history on our listings, going into the New Orleans Historic Collection and finding some really cool stuff. So I'm excited about this, and I know we're talking fast, but please let me know if you have any questions at all. So the bayou itself, how did we get it and how did it get here? It was originally a navigable distributary of the Mississippi River, and it was the main water route into the city for over a decade. So essentially, as people would come, either from making it across the North Shore down to Lake Pontchartrain, but also if you wanted to split off of the Mississippi River and go further inland, people would actually use that as one of their main navigation routes to get into the heart of the city beyond just the port areas of the French Quarter. The Carondelet Canal was built in the 1790s. It extended navigation from the bayou towards the French Quarter, and it was filled in later in the 1900s. So you'll hear a lot of these familiar names. You know, we do have Carondelet right now that runs from the French Quarter all the way to Uptown. And a lot of these names were names for water tributaries before. Also, it was a lot of different trade routes in terms of railways, in terms of, like horse-drawn buggy ways. I mean, it's just really super interesting to find out that just because it was Carondelet now, it wasn't always Carondelet Street. It was originally a canal. And spoiler alert, canal also used to be a canal. I know that's crazy. How did they get there? So today, the bayou actually no longer flows out to the lake due to subsidence. It sits higher than the surrounding land. So it's, if you think about it, it terminates right by where the Lindy Boggs Medical Center used to be, but it doesn't actively flow out to the lake, right? We do have some lake intrusion that comes into the bayou. But it's not so much an active waterway. It is more of that true bayou sense. It's a little bit more stagnant than it ever was before. And now that's why you see so many people kayaking on it and paddleboarding. It's a relatively calm body of water. So, and then something recently, Ben from Good Bones and Jake and I, we went on we didn't expect it to be a guided tour, kayak tour of Bayou St. John. We rented kayaks and come to find out, they also came with the tour. So we learned a lot during them. And one of the things that I found most fascinating is if you're familiar with Bayou St. John now, then you know the canal, the bayou banks. The bayou banks are all concrete. They've got the seating areas built into it, so it's got these little benches and stuff, but it wasn't always like that. The bayou's native name was Bayou Shoepick. That's how my dad always pronounced it. I know that some people call it Shoepick. Showpick, but I'm going to go with Shoepick for tonight. That translates to mudfish, so it literally meant mudfish bayou until St. John was added to the name later on. And then for most of the 20th century, it was treated as infrastructure, not nature. And then in 1955, the Sewage and Water Board drained it completely to clear out debris. People were having issues. They were complaining about the odor. From what I learned from our tour guide during the kayaking afternoon, is it was not beautiful. I mean, this was a transit location. That's what it was here for. That's what it was here to do. It was industrialized. It was heavily polluted. I mean, the bayou was not what it is today, but we'll talk about how we're trying to restore it to that. Later on, a concrete dam was built at Allen Toussaint Boulevard, cutting the bayou's tidal connection to Lake Pontchartrain for over 50 years. And then in 2011 and 2012, NOAA and the Louisiana Sea Grant funded a hydrological restoration project that removed the dam, reconnected it with the lake's tidal flow for the first time in over a century. So again, there have been many different lives of Bayou St. John. It has changed over time. It's been so many different things. But once they did that in 2011, 2012, something really cool happened. Almost as soon as that was reopened, speckled trout and submerged native vegetation recolonized the water. So it began to bring back all of this life into it. Now you can see fish. Last night we did a picnic out on Bayou St. John. We saw some fishermen out there catching fish. The fish weren't radiant. They didn't glow. It wasn't like they were radioactive. But you could see so much life and activity out there. Canadian geese are flying around. Of course, we've got some gators out there. We've all seen those from time to time. But the restoration push continues to today. Also, I dropped my pen, so bear with me. And I'm back. So this is something else that I find really fascinating, and it inspired me to get more involved in the Faubourg St. John Neighborhood Association. But there is a continued effort to remove the concrete banks that we currently have along the bayou and replace it with native vegetation and a more robust natural embankment. The Friends of Bayou St. John is also an organization that is heavily involved with this, in addition to the Faubourg St. John Neighborhood Association. They've commissioned a long-term visioning study, specifically asking whether those can be removed and replanted with natural banks. This is very ongoing. This is very active. It's also hotly contested. The ownership and management of the watershed also has a little drama to it. From what I heard on the street, and by on the street, I mean my kayak guide, is that we have beef between the Friends of City Park and the Friends of Bayou St. John. So those friend groups may not be friends. So there is some debate over who controls them. That's sort of the history of how we got the neighborhood. Very working class for a long time now, and it was very polluted. Now all these beautiful conservation efforts have been put into place, and now we're starting to see it get more and more beautiful every day. I continue to fall in love every time I see Bayou St. John. It's very relaxing. It's fun to hang out at. But we're not the only ones who have had a history of loving Bayou St. John and Esplanade Ridge. If you have dined at Cafe des Gars, which we'll talk about in a moment, we've had a very famous, let's say, long-term visitor. So in the fall of 1872, a then 38-year-old Edgar Degas traveled from Paris to visit his mother's Creole family in New Orleans at something of a personal crossroads, right? He was uncertain about his art career. He was unsure. He was worried about his eyesight. So he came to New Orleans to get away, to spend time with family, and to discover what he would like to do with his life. And then Ryan says, actually a rare location where you can catch salt and freshwater fish in New Orleans proper. That's correct. The water in Bayou St. John is brackish. That means that it is a combination of both salt water and freshwater. So you can get, it's a really fascinating ecological population there. You can find all kinds of fish there. But back to Edgar Degas. He stayed in New Orleans for 5 months. The whole time he was in this neighborhood. He stayed at his uncle Michel Mousson's rented mansion at 2306 Esplanade Avenue. That home is still there. You can still see it. It was large enough at the time to hold 17 permanent residents. They were all relatives, and 4 servants. While there, he completed 18 paintings, 4 drawings. Mostly those were portraits of his cousins depicting Creole life during Reconstruction. And he also wrote 5 letters that survive to this day. His most famous work from that period was it was a painting of the inside of his uncle's cotton brokerage. He was famous for painting ballet. The beautiful ballet figures, the studies of ballet. But really, once he got to New Orleans, he became fascinated with commerce for this brief window of time in which he stayed here on Esplanade. Hold on one second. Generations earlier, his own great-grandmother, Marie Riot, had built the Pitot House, the same West Indies style landmark you'll already be covering. We're going to be talking about in the architecture section. His family's fingerprints are now part of 2 of the most iconic Bayou St. John and Esplanade Ridge homes. So, as brief as his stay was in New Orleans, his family's influence is absolutely inseparable from the fabric of our neighborhood. That Esplanade Avenue mansion is now the Degas House. It's the only Degas home or studio open to the public anywhere in the entire world. You can book tours there. You can stay overnight there. They host a lot of weddings and events and things like that. And some of his great-grandnieces still lead the tours today. So you can go. That's something I love about this neighborhood. It's something I love about New Orleans, is that you can touch the history, right? You're so a part of it. It's everywhere around you. It's just something that I absolutely love. I just can't get over that. Of course, Cafe des Gars, which we'll talk about in a moment, is named in his honor, a fantastic French restaurant. And then if you would like to see an example of his work, you can go to NOMA, right on the edge of City Park. NOMA is the New Orleans Museum of Art, where they currently hold his portrait of Estelle Mousson-Degas, painted of his cousin during the visit. The New Orleanians actually crowdfunded just shy of $200,000 to buy it and donate it to the museum in 1965. Even regular citizens, school children, everybody was putting in their pennies. That's how much his presence meant to this area, and what a gift to the community in terms of art and accolades and recognition, that everybody pitched in just shy of $200,000 to have his portrait of Estelle Mousson-Degas donated to NOMA. And you can go see it today. It is still there. Like I said, New Orleans and Bayou St. John, you can really touch history here. Few little quick tidbits about the bayou. It is less than 5 miles long. It's about 200 feet wide on average, and it is only 9 feet deep. It's not very deep. Archaeologists have found artifacts in the area that are between 1600 to 1700 years old, dating all the way back to about 300 to 400 AD. And then the Magnolia Bridge, some people call it the Cabrini Bridge. It's the big blue bridge that's in all of the pictures and in many of the slides tonight. That's a hand-cranked swivel bridge. If you get close to it, you can see all those components under there, though they don't function anymore. But it was physically relocated about a quarter mile down the bayou in the early 1900s because the city, instead of reconstructing brand new bridges every time one was needed, they would just move the bridge. It's only 9 feet deep there. It's on concrete pilings. So they were able to just up and lift and move the bridge. So that's something that I always find interesting. And also, I am not the most skilled at kayaking under that bridge. It's much smaller, much lower than all the others. So if you do approach the Blue Bridge on a kayak, in a kayak, or on a paddleboard, give yourself some time to get into that. In 2019, a volunteer cleanup crew discovered the first known, we have an invasive species that was found nowhere else, but in 2019, a volunteer cleanup crew discovered the first known reproducing population of Asian swamp eels anywhere in North America, right in the bayou. We talk about biodiversity. Bayou St. John is incredibly biodiverse. All right. Two-part question from Scott. That's perfect because we're about to move on to architecture. Should it be safe to swim in it? Okay. And if so, is it legal to do so? It is legal. You are welcome to swim. You don't have to dock anywhere. You are welcome to swim in it, just as you are legally allowed to swim in Lake Pontchartrain. Okay, the jury's out on should you swim in it. I have done Bayou Boogaloo, a festival that used to be on the bayou. I have done that floating around, listening to music, drinking beer with my feet in it. I didn't grow any extra toes. The bayou gets increasingly cleaner year over year. So yes, people do it. People do it. If you have a tolerance for that, by all means, go for a swim. You will see people out there swimming. You will see people... you might flip your kayak. You might fall off a paddleboard. I think falling off a paddleboard is kind of the primary way that people get into the water in Bayou St. John. There are alligators in Bayou St. John, so that is something to be aware of, to be looking out for. They're pretty, I'm not telling you to go up to them, but they are pretty used to humans. They know that we're around. My brother shared a really helpful tip. This is very smart. I also learned this on a recent trip to Lake Tahoe, but do not dump aquarium fish in your local waters. That's how you get invasive species. You think you might be releasing Nemo only for Nemo to turn into some kind of tyrant and ruin an entire biosystem. So please, I will reiterate that. Don't dump your fish out in the lake, or out on the lake. Don't dump in the bayou. So yes, you can swim in it. Discretion up to you. It is legal, and don't dump your fish in the water. There you go. Unless it's a catch and release. That's the only time you should do it. You can fish in it as well. Make sure you have the permits, but you can fish in Bayou St. John. All right, we're going to move on. We're making some pretty decent time here. The history was the long one. And then we're going to get into, after architecture, I want to hear everybody's Bayou St. John and Esplanade Ridge favorites in terms of things to do. I buried the lead. Which one? I'll have to find out from Scott which lead I buried. They have found some crazy things in Bayou St. John before. And to this day, they still do. Okay, let's talk a little bit about architecture. This, just like I mentioned earlier, Bayou St. John being an incredibly diverse neighborhood, it is equally diverse in architecture style as well. Oh, Scott said the lead was that there are gators. Yes, there are gators. People do still swim, but they got gators in the water. So please be mindful of that. Also, if you walk a small dog, make sure you keep them on a leash. It is incredibly safe. I have spent hundreds of hours on Bayou St. John, on the bank, on the water. I've always felt safe. Like I said, the alligators tend to mind their own business, but if you do have the small styles and it's a raised center hall cottage, especially along Esplanade Avenue, raised center hall cottages are the ones where you walk in, beautiful kind of runway down to the back of the house, and then all of the rooms split off of that main hallway. This was designed for airflow, just like shotgun homes were designed, but it really helped with cooling off a property. In the second half of the 19th century, so in the 1850s and on, that's when the kind of ornate flourishes came about. You know, a lot of the stuff that you see along St. Charles started to make its way over here. That's going to be your Italianates, your Queen Anne's, your Second Empire Victorian, some of those flashier properties, right? Some of the homes that have that sort of like, I would say dollhouse vibe to it. So the later on in time, around the 1850s, that's when you started to get some of those more ornate Victorian style homes. We don't have a lot of, and correct me if you've seen them and I haven't, but we don't, is the Pitot House, built in 1799. It's a rare surviving example of French colonial West Indies architecture. You've got brick between post construction, double pitched hip roofs. It is the only Creole colonial plantation style home in the city still on its original riverfront site. This was the home of the very first mayor of New Orleans. His name was James Pitot. What's your favorite type of architecture? You know, in New Orleans, I know we've got a lot of them. You can go all over and see everything from, you know, the closer you get to the lake, you get some more mid-century. Let me know what your favorite architecture styles are. And then we're going to head on to the real estate market. This is why we're here. You know, we'll get the education out of the way real quick. But the Bayou St. John and Esplanade Ridge actually has a very strong real estate market. As of right now, or as of July, there's only 3.75 months of inventory. That means that if no other buyer, rather quickly. Then again, a good house in good condition in a good location will always sell quickly. That's it in a snapshot. You know, it's above the city's average sale price, which is around the mid 300s. It has a walking score of 83, so you can get just about anywhere you need to be on foot over here. And the housing stock does skew historic. Most of the homes in this neighborhood were built before 1939. So if you do want an older home with these strong bones, this is a great area to look at. But I do love a fried shrimp po' boy. Cafe des Gars. Cafe des Gars is in the picture. Cafe des Gars is located on Esplanade. Liz loves a barbecue roast beef. Got to respect that. I love that. I'll get you a custom Engel and Volker's bib if you'd like, just for eating those po' boys. I go to Cafe des Gars all the time. We love to pop over there. They do have there's also Lola's. Last night I got to go from Lola's, also on Esplanade. We got some garlic shrimp and some calamari, and we popped over to the lake. To the bayou, and we had a little picnic last night, which was absolutely lovely. You also have Thousand Figs, which obviously earlier I mentioned the Pitot House. It is a historic museum. It is open to the public. They also host various different events. So they will host, I think my stream may have gone down. Let's see. There we go. Let's see if we are back up. Let's see. Pardon me. Okay, we're gonna keep going. See what might have happened there, but we are back. The Pizzo House is open. They also host a ton of fun events. If you're joining back in, I don't know if I lost the feed or something, so I apologize for that, but we are so back. I'm even wired to Ethernet. I don't know how that happened. But the Pizzo House hosts a super fun Bastille Day celebration. Ponce de Leon, which is a street where Thousand Figs and all of those are located. They also host a Bastille Day celebration, and it is an absolute blast. You can visit the Degas House, St. Louis Cemetery number 3. Very interesting area. It was built to accommodate more of the population of Greek Orthodox members of the community, reflect the wealth of the 19th century mid-city families. So this was really built up at that time to be a very nice cemetery, which has a couple of really prominent folks interred there. Thank you for letting me know, Scott. I think we are back. Let me try to edit something. I think next time I might have to. I see the fix for next time, so thank you for letting me know. But we have a couple interesting people who were interred there at St. Louis Cemetery number 3. That's going to be jazz pianist Sweet Emma Barrett. And you can also visit photographer E.J. Belloc. If you're not familiar with the work of Belloc, he is the famed Storyville photographer. There's an absolutely beautiful book of his images that was released. Storyville, if you are not familiar, was the red light district of New Orleans. There is also now a Storyville museum in the French Quarter that's very interesting. But also in terms of landmarks and parks, we've got City Park and Noma. City Park, which is right on the edge. City Park is one of the largest public parks, municipal public parks in the country. City Park was donated in 1854. It was the former site of the Allard Plantation. It was willed to the city by John McDonough in 1854, making it one of the oldest urban parks in the entire country. And then later on in 1911, sugar broker Isaac Delgado, of course, from Delgado Community College, he donated the funds that were necessary to open the New Orleans Museum of Art. So that's how we got Noma in City Park. Also, the Lafitte Greenway, that connects all the way pretty much from City Park to the end of, to right at the end of Bayou St. John. The Lafitte Greenway is a walking, biking, rollerblading direct path from Bayou St. John all the way to the French Quarter. So that's a really fantastic way to get around in the city. It is much safer than some other bike transit in the neighborhood. And that was, it carried traffic since at least 1794, but much later on, it was converted in 2015, thanks to funds from a post-Katrina federal recovery grant. In 2015, it was converted to strictly pedestrian. So now it's a wonderful area to be on. You can get up and down the city very easily. So those are just a couple of the places that you can check out. We also have the fairgrounds and the racetrack over there. That's where Jazz Fest takes place. That's where a lot of horse racing takes place. I think they still do the exotic animal races. So if you want to see an ostrich run down a track, you can do that around Thanksgiving. That's just about all of it. So that is everything that you need to know right off the top in terms of the history, the architecture, what there is to do. Is it safe to get in the water? So let's talk a bit about who is it for and who isn't it for. I would recommend Bayou St. John for buyers who really want to have kind of a car optional lifestyle. You really favor walkability. You favor proximity to city services and to the hustle and bustle of the city. But Bayou St. John has a ton of access to nature. be it the Bayou itself, be it some of these little parks that are around here and City Park, or even directly up to the lake. That's one of the things that really draws me to it, is that you have so much access to nature. It really gives you room to breathe. You've got moderately sized lot sizes around here, so it's not super expansive like you might get, a ton of land for the price in Gentilly, but you are probably going to have a yard here. You're not right on top of each other. You can appreciate historic character. If you really like these, yes, my brother said that they do wiener dog races as well at the racetrack, so go check it out. They said Bayou St. John is perfect if you want to feel on the edge of nature. That's exactly right. I could not have put that any better. If you're very food and drink forward, Jake and I certainly are food and drink forward. So we love that we can just pop over to Cafe des Gars to, I love being able to grab an appetizer in one place, to grab an entree in another place, a dessert at somewhere else, and then an evening cocktail afterwards, or you can grab a dessert at Douai, which just opened over there. And if you follow me on social media, you see that we stopped by the other day. But I just love that everything is in this little pocket. I can pop around and have one of each at all of these different establishments and never have to go far. So it's just really lovely. You can also pick up that food and those drinks, and you can walk it over to the bayou like we did last night and watch the sunset. And it's just a really beautiful blend of architecture. It's a beautiful blend of communities, and it's a beautiful access to the bayou. I just love it so much. And it feels truly authentically New Orleans. You don't have a lot of modern architecture over here. Liz actually lives about 2 blocks from us, so she and her partner are also in the neighborhood. She says that she loves the neighborhood because all of our neighbors are the best. Everyone looks out for each other, and you can feel the love. That's absolutely right. I mean, even before we moved in and we were looking at buying the house and we were getting everything together, we knew the history and the names and who's in charge and all of that different stuff. We knew all of our neighbors and got their phone numbers so fast. It just feels lovely. People really walk their dogs. People walk, with their strollers, with the kids. They go out. They are spending time out of the home. And that's what makes it feel so community-based. If you are more of a recluse and you don't want to talk to your neighbors that much, look, I support you. Sometimes I get it. But this may not be the type of neighborhood for you. The other people that this might not be a great fit for, in terms of a neighborhood, is it might not be for somebody who wants new construction. There's really not, it's extremely hard to find new construction over here. If you want a huge lot in Bayou St. John, it comes at a pretty steep premium. So if you want a really big lot and that's super important to you, I might recommend looking further into the Gentilly area where you can get a little bit more land and value, and that's that way. If you want a modern floor plan, like if you want a big open floor plan, chances are you might have to make that yourself. In our home, it's a double shotgun, right? So you've got a lot of separation between rooms. We find that it flows really nicely for us, but if you want a truly open concept, you might have to either do renovation work or find the very rare, already modernized property on the market. It might take you a little while. If you want a managed community, like an HOA kind of thing, we don't have that. I don't know many people who want to be in an HOA, but your community drives the community. You don't have a governing board here besides the the HDLC. You can also join the Neighborhood Association, Faubourg St. John Homeowners Association. But really, this isn't for somebody who wants to feel like they're in a planned community. Like we talked about at the very beginning, going over the history of Bayou St. John and Esplanade Ridge, this wasn't a plan. The plan was the neighborhood just grew over time to meet the individual demands of the community. And that's why it feels like a really cool hodgepodge where you can kind of, in a way, cut the tree down and you can see the rings of history within the neighborhood just by walking around. If you want a bunch of nightlife at your doorstep, this may not be for you. Like if you want to be really close to, clubs or a whole bunch of bars, I can walk to Pal's really easily, but it's not going to be the kind of, not as much the like nightlife party scene That's not going to be in Bayou St. John enough. You can make that on your porch and neighbors will show up. I can almost guarantee you that, because we've had plenty of porch hangs with Liz. We've had them with our neighbors on either side and across the street. Really, that's something that I love immensely about this neighborhood, is if you are on your porch, somehow a party will start to develop and grow on your porch with cool people too. Like, everybody is so awesome. So who's it for? Someone who likes a variety of architecture, likes the history, likes to be relatively walkable to things, and would like access, as Ryan mentioned, or Jacqueline, whoever's commenting, mentioned, that you feel on the edge of nature. It is just lovely. I also think, call me crazy, I think Bayou St. John's a good 5 degrees cooler than the rest of the city. Tell me if I'm wrong. I think with the bayou and the openness and the trees, we have so many beautiful trees that I think we have, a good 5 degrees on the rest of the city. While they're out there sweating, we're dabbing. All right. That's it. That is sort of it. Remember, we talked about the history, the architecture, the lifestyle, the fit. Who's it for? Who is it not for? This is the first episode of an ongoing series. I do apologize for the tech issues that I had a minute ago. I'm going to make sure that those aren't going to happen next time. So, this being a new format, please give me your feedback. Drop it in the comments. Let me know. I want to improve this. I want to make sure that this is something of value. As a reminder, my mantra is always empowerment through education. So these will always be free. I want to make sure that this is something that is of value to everyone. The next neighborhood. So the next live stream, as a reminder, these are bi-weekly, every other week. The next one is going to be Thursday, August 20th, again at 6:30 p.m. If you would like a different time, or if you think that doesn't work, you want to do some on the weekend, let me know. We can be flexible. But that next one on Thursday, August 20th at 6:30 p.m., we're going to dive into the history and the architecture and the real estate of the Garden District. We're going OG, baby. We're not going as OG just yet on the French Quarter. That is going to be a grand episode all on her own. But we're going to do the Garden District next up. I'm excited. Some of the coolest history, some of the most elaborate residences and private residences in the entire city. So in 2 weeks, we're talking about the Garden District. We'll have a new opening video. I know that's exciting. Please do reach out anytime. You can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, like and follow on YouTube. Thank you so much, Scott. This part of the city didn't know too well, and he learned a lot tonight. That's why we do it. That means a lot. This is a really fascinating area of the city that I think kind of flies under the radar a good bit. Please, like I mentioned, subscribe, follow me on socials at Richard.Hebert Realtor. You can always contact me. My personal cell phone number is 504-617-5184. Call or text me. We can talk about your real estate goals, whether you're in New Orleans or looking outside of New Orleans. If it's outside of the state of Louisiana, I can connect you with incredible real estate advisors in just about every market through our England Volkers network. So please let me know whether you're looking near or far. We can help you. Don't forget to book your complimentary one-on-one real estate session. We also have that home buyer boot camp. We have the home buyer boot camp, which has a 100% success rate of attendees to new homeowners, by the way. So that goes over everything. That is 1 hour long. I'm happy to book that anytime. Ryan says, I firmly believe New Orleans wouldn't exist without Bayou St. John. Loads of historical significance, 100%. I could not agree more with you, brother. That is what made this city what it is today, along with the Port of New Orleans. Without those two things, we would not have New Orleans. And you can walk amongst history and touch the history and be a part of the history right here in St. John. So again, to wrap things up about 2 minutes early, I really appreciate you joining. Thank you so much for spending your time with me. I love doing these. I even learn a lot about our different neighborhoods And I just really appreciate you spending time with me. So reach out anytime. You're a part of the family. And if you need anything at all, you can always contact me. Thank you. And I hope you have an absolutely beautiful night.